So good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start up our afternoon session, our plenary session this afternoon, devoted to the topic that you can see there on the screen, the new challenges of smart cities, responding to the changes in our cities during the Metropolitan Century. That's a reference to a recent report. And the rest of our exchanges will be in English, so if you need the interpretation, there's still time to pick up a headset so as to benefit from the simultaneous translation, although that may not be absolutely essential.
Host this session here with Innovative City, and I'm delighted that we have all the speakers we intended to have, even more. Let me introduce briefly our panelists today, starting from our left, with Philippe Ban, the CEO of the Smart Cities Council. He can explain us what the Smart Cities Council is about and what being the CEO of the Smart Cities Council is about. Then we have Dr. Koji SASAKI from the Institute of Urban Strategies at the Mori Memorial Foundation in Tokyo. Thank you very much for joining us for this session and commenting on current smart city issues as seen from Tokyo agglomeration. Next to him, Mr. Dixon, Tom Dixon from IBM. I don't know if it is necessary to introduce Mr. Dixon, but as a figure of smart cities and as a figure of IBM, he will be able also to comment on what IBM is doing currently in that field. Next to him, Mr. Van den Abele from ABB, smart cities, smart energy, smart grid systems, but also a prominent member of the Agoria Smart City Committee. Agoria is a cluster of smart cities in Belgium. And next to him is Alexey Kosmin. Alexey Kosmin from the city of Tomsk. Tomsk is located in Siberia. And Siberia has a couple of issues linked with smart cities and smart urban development that you might not be aware of, but which are very well connected to our subject. Today we will try to figure out where we are when we are talking about smart cities. If you have been looking at the program in English, the title was a little bit more provocative than in French, was The End of Smart Cities ? Current challenges of building creative and innovative smart cities right now in this century of metropolis, referring to that report of the OECD. And with Philippe Ban, with Peter van den Heede, with Koji SASAKI, with Alexey Kosmin, with Michael Dixon, we'll try to figure out. Of course, it's provocative to ask the question here about the end of smart cities, especially you've got a session going on with the Smart Cities Council about smart cities in the future, smart cities now. But clearly, we have entered a new phase, a new era of smart cities, or at least it is the issue which will be driving us in our roundtable. Just one short comment. A couple of years ago, IBM launched a corporate global strategy on smart cities. 7-8 years afterwards, the market has changed profoundly. Regarding smart cities, some sectors like smart grids, smart energy systems have emerged as more consolidated industries, markets. Others have re-emerged or changed considerably, the Internet of Things, big data-driven issues. It's sometimes very difficult to really assess if there is a market, how durable is it, and to make clear business plans and clear foresight. Smart cities are also constantly changing, and if you refer to what Mr. Estrosi mentioned this morning, he insisted a lot in his keynote about the social balance, the social issue, the social contract, the social dynamism linked with smart cities and how they are connected with the people. The French tech also displays a lot of startups that provide provocative apps that are quite different than the range of services that large global corporations can provide. So the market of smart cities is constantly changing. We'll try to figure out where we are standing now, what we can expect from the near future, and definitely if we can count on smart cities to be a driving force of smart growth, of green growth, of growth for our cities globally in the near future. To start our conversation, I would like to first ask Mr. Ban, with the Smart Cities Council, with the global approach you have with the Council, but with the global experience which you also have personally. I think the mic works.
It does? Okay.
Yeah. To give us his feeling about those sets of questions and where we are standing now in terms of smart city and maturity of markets, markets with the S. There are several markets linked with smart cities. Philip.
Thank you, Nicolas. I couldn't start without thanking Mr. Dixon from IBM and, of course, our other partner, ABB, because they were actually some of the founding partners for the Smart Cities Council. And it was their vision, as much as anything, that brought us here. But we've matured since that early vision. And I would like to say that the Smart Cities Council, our goal is to educate cities through the world's largest network of smart city practitioners. Currently, we represent over 60 companies, 70 universities, another 200 advisory groups from civil society, and essentially they do over, they have like several millions of employees and over $2 trillion worth of business in the smart city sector. What we do is essentially educate cities. Peter Thiel just wrote a book about Silicon Valley, taking venture capitalists, taking startups from 0 to 1. And our view is that our job is to take cities from 0 to 1. From not being, they're really not, it's not a question of the level of education, it's a question of just the knowledge that they need to be able to become smart consumers of these technologies that provide benefits around livability, workability, and sustainability. For those of us at the Smart Cities Council, this is a lifelong venture. I've owned and taken companies public. My partner has owned several companies. I've run big technology projects in the oil and gas industry. And this is the first place where we really feel like we have found a home. The idea being is that this is about people. It's not about technology, it's about people. And we only started about 30 months ago, and in the process, we've become the world's largest repository of smart city knowledge. We produce what's called the Readiness Guide, which is approximately a catalog of over 5,000 case studies throughout the world. And we essentially talk about the benefits. We don't talk about the features, Wi-Fi, mesh, this type of data analytics versus that kind of data analytics. What we talk about the differences that these technologies make for the people who live in cities. We have a global vision. This is about helping people throughout the world. For me personally, this is about reducing suffering. Samuel Johnson said that you can always analyze a civilization by how the poor are treated. And I think smart cities is about as good a way as any to relieve the suffering of the poor, the dispossessed, the homeless. I mean, we talk about what we can do with public safety, we talk about what we can do with health, we talk about what we can do about mobility, but in the end, there's a strong impetus about helping those that are less fortunate. And so the other aspect of this for us from an international standpoint is that it's also not telling others how to build their cities. We just established Smart Cities Council India. We're in the process of organizing in China. We're in the process of organizing in the Middle East. We are also going to set up a Smart Cities Council Europe within the next year. I've done business all around the world, but people look at me as an American, and when they see me coming, they think they're going to see arrogance. They're going to see somebody who's going to tell them what to do. And our distinct philosophy is, and this was reflected in what happened in India, it's for Indians to build the cities for themselves, to tell us what their social, cultural, economic, geography allows in their particular environment. And once you understand that, there's a unique opportunity to take these technologies that have been developed out of Europe, developed out of the United States, Japan, Korea, China. China has tremendous technologies in the area of smart cities development. But ultimately, it's about helping people help themselves. And cities are all about where we live, and they're about where our children and our grandchildren are going to live. So it's a noble effort, and the simple answer to your question is smart cities is a journey. So it is not going to end. And if we do this right, we are essentially empowering the next generation to use the technologies. I'm a big student of history, and I look at what's happened in Egypt and India and China, some of the smartest cities that you've ever seen. I mean, Romans with aqueducts are thousands of years old. I've been instructed in India about how Indians use the aquifer and underground water cisterns to replenish Rajasthan. So the idea that somehow smart technologies are going to make the difference is, I think, incorrect. It's about taking the cities as they are and incrementally making them smarter day by day, week by week, year by year. And I think we're very proud at the Smart Cities Council and the vision of people like Mr. Dixon and others that have given the opportunity to start this journey. Thank you.
And now keep the mic. Just a couple of questions to start with. The first is very simple. Why did we need a global Smart Cities Council? Because you've got a wealth of number of networks and organizations already. You mentioned IBM and ABB as founding partners. There are a couple of other large corporations, Alstom and others. Why did it come that those companies felt it was useful, meaningful, and necessary to organize and form a council or a global network?
Well, I'm sure they can speak for themselves, but my own view of it, having sold technology for many decades, is that it's not about technology. It's about change management. It's about how you go into an organization like a city, and you see this all the time even in companies, and it's educating people about how to change how they live their lives. I mean, every aspect of energy management right now, to a great extent, is about behavior, is about changing behavior with energy reduction, energy efficiency, and demand response. So to a great extent, it's about showing cities that adopting these technologies is not alien. It's not something that's counter to their desire to produce valuable services to cities. So I think it was a recognition that if a company like Alstom or Cisco or IBM or ABB walked into a city environment, a lot of times they're seen as a vendor. A lot of times there is an issue about, you know, are they trying to sell something or are they trying to help us? So what happened here is that the Smart City Council acts as an intermediary. They're able to take the message and able to communicate it to a lot of different participants, a lot of different cities in a vendor-neutral way. So I think as much as anything, it was a very brilliant, insightful way to educate cities about how they could incrementally improve and adopt these benefits.
And would you say that so far cities, at least too many cities, have been passive, like regarding technology and changes and waiting for people or companies to bring technologies, and that you feel that they need to be much stronger players, much decisive players?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I will bring in an American concept here, and it's the idea of creative destruction. And what we really have to do is cities have to learn to become economic players. They have to understand that they are not, if they don't do anything, they end up being passive and they end up getting sort of whatever the market can give them. And I think they're great examples about where cities like Barcelona, Amsterdam, Vancouver in North America have taken the bull by the horns and decided we are going to determine. And in Europe, I've spent a lot of time with the European Innovation Program. The key word is city needs and city-led. And I think that's really, from an economic standpoint, I think that perception needs to grow. That cities can determine for themselves which technologies and which benefits they choose, because it varies from place to place.
All right, thank you. So we will now explore with Peter van den Heede, and with Michael Dixon. the role of companies and how do they see this changing environment, be it about energy or be it about other ranges of industrial and services issues. Are companies just vendors, or are they partners? Are they service providers? Are they innovators? Are they clustering? What's happening right now? What do you see, Peter, in the field of our subject today?
Yes, I fully agree. So what we have here now is that cities have to take the lead in an economic way. And we as technology provider are often seen as pure vendors. So if we go directly to cities, they think directly that we just come over to sell products. And of course, at the end, this is also what we want to do as technology provider. So it's important to create more stakeholders around the concept and come with solutions that are going much further away of that what we can provide as a technology provider. So if you look, for example, to ABB, we were focusing in the past a lot on smart grids. But this is already something where we can say, the grid, especially in Europe, is quite smart. If you look to the medium voltage and high voltage side, this is already almost done. Of course, there's still an evolution, still there is a need for more automation, but this is already done. So if you go to cities, you have to deal with another topic, and that's the ICT layer above. So if you look to cities and you look to building solutions or mobility solutions or, let's say, all the energy flows, there are technologies available, so a city can execute this anyway. But it will become more and more important that those solutions are connected in between. So means that cities have to look to ICT layers to make sure that there is a connection. And this is not often the case. What we also see is that a lot of cities still don't have made their own vision. And this is not counting for the largest one in Europe, of course, they all have a vision. But if you look to the smaller ones, they still are struggling on what the smart city could mean for them, how to organize. And what we have seen is that you need at least first a vision as a city. What do you want to achieve? As mentioned already, there are cities more focusing on social environments, if this is needed for them. Others will look more to mobility topics. So that's the first step that is needed. And then you need a kind of an executing team, so a responsible team that has the possibility to bring it to concrete solutions. And also there we see very often that politicians are not allowing them really to execute. So they all stay in their own silos. And this is also something where cities should think on, that they have to bring this to the execution level as well. So this is still going on. So if we talk about the end of smart cities, we believe we are just at the starting phase of smart cities. And of course, the connection to metropolitan areas is made here. You can say even a large city is like a metropolitan area. If I look to Brussels, for example, 19 communities. We have the poorest community of Belgium and Brussels and the richest one. And of course, the needs for both of them belonging to Brussels are completely different. So there's not a one solution for one city. Regarding the involvement of people, it's true that in the beginning technical solutions or technology was just provided to them, and we have not always listened to what people really want to have. And I want to refer to one project now in the Netherlands where people were highly involved. They made their own choice of what they could do in their buildings. And as buildings are good for 70% of the energy consumption in the city, it will be for us very important to be active there. And bringing them close to the technology, so means just listen and then give them the solution they want to have without talking about technology. We have seen that they became really ambassadors for smart energy. So they are now telling to others and to the press how they have felt to use this and how this brought them really some advantages. So listen more to what is happening in cities, to the citizens will be also for us as technology provider a key issue.
You mentioned, Philip mentioned that too, that we were only at the starting point of the journey of smart cities, right? But we can also derive a couple of precious lessons from the past 4 or 5 years. Would you say, because when we talk about smart cities, we tend to believe that there is a sort of global model of industry financing stream that will turn all our cities as smart places. Obviously, it's much more complex than that, but a comment from the industry, some very large corporations have invested a lot of time and money in sort of organizing themselves around the issue of smart cities with the different ranges of products and services. And for some companies, the outcomes of that after a couple of years have been difficult to assess. Not to say more. There are other models, as I understand, which are much more flexible, pragmatically driven. A company like ABB, which is a global player, which communicates worldwide, is it organized like as a corporation around the issue of smart cities? Or if I take the example of ABB in Europe, how are you organized?
Yeah, that's the good question. There were some players really organizing themselves towards cities, or let's say the new businesses they thought that would come from cities and smart grids. We haven't done this. To be honest, we are too having a role like I do in Europe. So you cannot say that we are really organized as. So we believe that local people in the local countries have to listen to what happens in their countries, what are the needs in their cities. So what we have done is created a kind of a cluster organization in Europe where we have 45 specialists working on an occasional base on that topic and bringing their experience together. So we are not really looking to that market as one global solution. No, we try to keep it just in the business units as today, and we try to arrange a cluster organization and bringing expertise from different countries together and help then other countries to execute in this process. So we are not really looking to a global structure, neither in smart grids, neither in cities today.
And 2 small questions. The first one, are all companies dealing with energy organized the same way, or has been different options? The second one is, what about the issue of clustering, not inside the company, but with the energy clusters or with the other clusters? Is it part today of the indispensable toolkit of the perfect smart city maker?
Yeah, so the first I can be quite short. I think we are the only one dealing with the smart grid or smart city structure as we do today. So most of our competitors have a larger structure around this. So, but we believe that this can remain in the local businesses, in the local countries, without a global organization. If we look to cluster organizations with other players in the market, even also competitors, there we believe strongly that cooperation is needed. That's also the reason why I became chairman of the Smart City Council in Belgium. So we have there 1,720 technology providing companies together, and we have now 4 working groups where 52 companies are working to what we can call a kind of a white paper towards cities, all with small smart city related topics. Means easy to invest, easy to install, and projects with a very short return on investment, as we have seen that cities are not having the structure, neither the money to invest in huge projects for the moment. So we believe with the whole group that starting with smaller ones that earns money in a short term and gives also quite some marketing feedback, that this can help them to invest then in mid-term and long-term projects and over the coming years. So that is exactly how we cluster with all players in that field.
And would you qualify the sector of energy in the world of smart city, especially energy with smart grids and smart energy systems, as being more mature in terms of market, in terms of industrial processes than other segments of smart cities?
Yeah, I think so. So about energy, so the flows, so energy flows, gas, water, but also water treatment afterwards, and electricity are already well equipped in cities, but they still miss is automation. So the automation level is low, and they work very often completely independent. So the utility bringing the water into the city is almost always independent from electricity, independent from gas. So also there, once again, as mentioned in the beginning, the ICT layer, the interoperability, so connectivity in between those flows is still missing, and this is what has to be built up in cities in the coming years. So cities have to take the lead there. So they often leave it too much to utilities, and due to that they have no influence anymore, or almost no influence. So we believe that cities has to take the lead in their own energy flows as well.
Thank you. We will now go to Michael Dixon. You have heard a couple of very thoughtful insights and comments with the viewpoint from the General Manager of Global Smarter Cities from IBM, with IBM being one of the early global corporations to have invested in the field of smart city and smart urban development. How would you react to the sort of evolution of smart cities and smart cities markets that have been described through Philip Bain and Peter van den Heede? And how would you characterize now the strategy of IBM, of your company?
Well, thank you. It's a very interesting discussion. I hope, first of all, you can understand I don't speak English, I speak Australian, so I hope that's okay for most of you. We were, as Philip mentioned, a fairly early adopter of something that we saw as a major strategy emerging around the world. And IBM saw in cities the opportunity to apply technology in much the same way that we saw happening in the commercial world. So we saw some things which I'll talk about in a moment that began to transform banking, began to transform airlines, began to transform insurance companies, began to transform retail. And we saw that these things had fantastic applicability to cities around the world. Many cities were very much focused on an older style of public sector organisation, and we started to see national governments moving to things most important to them, like social services and defence and border control and income tax, and leaving some of the things that matter most to people, as Philip was saying earlier: transport, water, public safety, waste, environment, buildings, energy consumption. These kinds of things were being left to cities to manage. So we started to think about what we were seeing, what the opportunity was, and we saw some dominant themes that have existed for a decade now in information technology or more that we started to interpret for cities. And those themes are really clear. Firstly, society is generating a staggering amount of data, which just 10 or 15 years ago it was not producing. Everything now has intelligence associated with it. The most intelligent sensor we have in society are all the people in the room who have a smartphone, most of you using it most of the time, documenting all sorts of things of interest to you, through to, I was in Spain last week and learned of a rubbish bin that has a Twitter account. Don't laugh, it's got 5 followers. And this particular rubbish bin, of course, communicates when it requires attention. So we're starting to see things that we never thought could possibly have an identity producing valuable information. So the first thing we've got to think about is this vast amount of information that's being generated. The second part of that is the transport of that data. And so we understand the internet and related communications technologies, but this vast amount of data is now being transported across these networks, but it's got to go somewhere. And our interest really is in when it comes to somewhere to apply some intelligence to it, to understand the patterns, to find needles in these haystacks of data. And so we're beginning to really come to understand across society, and I'll get to cities in a moment, that we now live in a fact-based society where in the 21st century, data is the currency. We could talk more about Bitcoin and what's going to happen with currency. That's a separate discussion. But data is what matters, and information is what matters in the 21st century. So people like me and Philip and Peter and others here, Sasaki-san, Alexey, have made a career based on good education and good experience and good judgment. It doesn't matter anymore. The next generation say, show me the facts. Give me the facts. I want to manage with facts. And that's the fundamental thing that really comes to bear now in cities. So we start to look at a city as an entity and say, well, what do we see happening in transport? What do we see happening in waste management? What do we see happening in environmental issues? What do we see in energy consumption? How do we manage public safety? How do we deal with emergencies? And so cities are beginning to say, show me the facts around these things, building models, interpreting existing behaviour to understand what's going on, and then moving to where society will get to increasingly, over the long term, as Philip points out, into predictive modelling, where we can decide how do we intervene to change people's lives. I won't talk now, but social networking is another extraordinary influence in society. For the first time in history, there is no doubt that Athens and Rome and Gujarat and other cities were spectacular in the past, but they were all pretty one-way. Government has a history of being a one-way communication. For the first time, and Mayor Estrosi here in Nice is a fantastic example, we have an extraordinary richness of two-way communication between individuals, between people, between groups, between cities. So we're starting to see this really powerful influence and dialogue. So, you know, I think the answer to your question is that cities are now coming together. Nice Côte d'Azur is an excellent example. The fact that we're here reflects that, to bring together organisations like Smarter Cities Council and research institutes and powerful industrial companies with the public sector and private entities here in Nice Côte d'Azur to address some of these problems. So again, my view is that Smarter Cities has moved on from Smarter Cities is good, we'll do Smarter Cities, to how am I putting in pooled electric vehicles to change the way in which the GDP is generated in the city based on reducing transport? How am I eliminating waste going to landfill by effectively managing recycling? How am I dramatically changing the generation, storage and arbitrage of energy in a city? So I think for me, the really dramatic change that's happened, and the thing that our team is involved here in Nice Côte d'Azur and around the world, is that we are now focused on very specific projects. And I want to just finish with something that's so important. They are specific projects that deliver a financial benefit. If a project does not deliver an increase in service and a financial benefit, nothing happens. There is no spare money. My job takes me to all parts of the world. I'm yet to meet a city or a public sector leader who says, I have too much money, can you help me spend it? That doesn't happen. And what we see as cities saying, we have dramatic inefficiencies, we have old structures that need transformation, we need to change the way in which particular models are implemented in the city, and we do that to generate a financial benefit. So I think it's back to these projects, and we're starting to see cities integrate their systems to really change the way in which a city functions.
So back to the projects, and if we refer to what was mentioned by Peter just before, saying that it's a global spectrum of issue, but we are dealing project by project, tiny ways by tiny ways, not always with the big picture all at once. You mentioned one important issue linked with data, which is turning issues into figures so that we can gain more predictability, right? So that especially cities around the world, and it was part of the initial steps taken by IBM with cities, especially large cities, we will help you figure out where you will be moving so that you can better cope with urban growth, right? And build the infrastructures and the facilities linked to that, and measure not too much energy being spent uselessly, etc. But there is something else you've mentioned also, social networks, right? Or people-to-people networks, which brings a lot of unpredictability in the systems. There is predictability on the one hand, and there are disruptions, a lot of disruptions, many kinds of disruptions, which are coming also on stage. And it's sometimes a little bit difficult to expect what will be the next disruptions. Disruptions happen in the field of technology, but also in the field of the society. Barcelona was already mentioned as an example, but if you see the results of latest elections in Barcelona, the city mayor has changed. And part of the deal was, okay, we have been branded worldwide as a tech hub, but how do the people live in the city with the tech hub? We don't feel part of that. We want something else. I don't know if it is a model or not, if it is an announcement of what can happen in other cities, but clearly one issue is especially linked with smart cities. How can we build smart cities when we are in times of so easy disruptions of plans, of strategies, of governance trends?
Well, I think we've kind of answered the question here. I think the disruption is taking place because people are getting access to facts and data they haven't had in the past. And we can give lots of examples in transport or energy or the other areas I've mentioned where you can change the way things happen in the city because you challenge assumptions of what used to be the case. And this is really changing business models. So, you're all aware, I know, in Nice Côte d'Azur at the moment, that the service economy is being felt for people with conflict between organisations like existing taxi structures and Uber, or Airbnb with existing hospitality structures. Now, that doesn't mean that one is good or bad. It just means we're starting to see how facts can change the way in which these things are delivered. So I think the model is that people are now getting information for the first time and changing what they want. And the example used in Barcelona is an excellent example of two-way communication. If people don't feel that their needs and their requirements and the value for money that they expect is being delivered from those that they've elected to represent them, they change that and get someone else to try. So I think this is about the value, that data that we all take. Each of us in this room, just think about your own lives. In the last couple of years, you are now receiving and using information to change the way you use your time, use your money, use your priorities, use your skills. And I think these are the things that are changing models. So what we used to think of as a city is changing as we sit here because people are getting the facts and the information they need to change cost structures. I'll just finish with an example from Madrid, where I was working last week, where the city has put in a new capability to manage the way in which its service providers deliver things. So to use, it's very complex. They have hundreds of services that they're working on, but it's everything from a waste collection system, which in the past had a company required, I'll use any numbers, to empty 5,000 trash containers twice a week for X amount of money, to ensure the trash is empty. And that changes the way in which the service provider delivers, because that company is now completely changing their routes. They're only focused on bins that fill quickly. They're making more profit because their costs are down. The government is spending less because they don't have to empty as many bins as often. We have people in Madrid who are using their phones and tablets to take photos of existing systems and put them into the new business process. The citizens love it, the providers love it, and the government loves it. So we're starting to see these models change because of facts that people now have in their hands.
And we also mentioned that regarding smart cities, there may be global trends, right? But there are as many issues and as many markets as there are of cities. It's not true, but as an image. Okay, in those contexts, as you mentioned Nice Côte d'Azur, we could mention a couple of French or other European cities where both national, regional, and local governments frequently cooperating the one with the others, which was not the case a couple of years before on the issue of tech, right? Like French tech, promoting labels and etc. Are also pushing hard so as to open up the access to data with the open data, and also are investing quite a significant amount of public seed money, right, to fund startups, right? A lot of startups which will showcase new apps. Devoted to both make people's life easier, respond to some needs, but also to be successful on the market, right? And this very recent, if I take France, over the last 2 years, the context has been changing quite dramatically. It was there before, but it's been changing quite dramatically. How does a global organization like IBM sees those changes which are being pushed by the citizens and also led by cities, saying that it needs to be like a different kinds of more horizontal organization? And how does this affect the market of smart cities?
Well, I think there's two dimensions to the question. The first is, how does IBM respond? We respond pretty readily because we are typically present around the world. You know, we've been in Nice for 70 years. So we usually have a local team that can interpret this. But the themes are the same. So people requiring effective management of water require that around the world. People that require effective relief from flooding require that around the world. People that require relief from traffic congestion to boost their GDP require that around the world. So what we see are a few themes, and what we see are various parts of the world. Africa is very interested in water. The Middle East is very interested in water. China is very concerned about pollution and traffic. You know, the Nordics are very interested in energy. Japan is doing the most extraordinary things in energy as it seeks to recover from the disaster on the Tohoku Peninsula. So different parts of the world are focused on different things. So from IBM's point of view, we have you know, we spend $6 billion a year on research. We spend in various areas to support these different initiatives. But what we see are different cities, countries and regions having a different focus and building skills and capability in that area. But over time, as Philip quite accurately pointed out, these things will all come together. But it's going to take decades. This is not going to be fixed in the short term. So, you know, I think the really important thing is to find the things that matter most in particular cities, because they're the things that are most likely to get everybody's support and attention, focus, spending, you know, and the things that really are required to make a difference.
Thank you. We will now get the comment of two urban experts, of urban leaders from the point of view of cities in very different kind of business, governance, social, geographic, urban environments. Alexey, from your experience in Russia, but not only in Russia, you have got a global experience, but from your experience in Russian cities with this massive heritage of post-Soviet infrastructure and housing, how do you feel the connectedness with this global approach to smart cities that has been displayed so far?
Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you for all of speakers. It was very interesting to understand very modern trend from very top person in the sphere. And also in Russia we have, I think, the same problem like all around the world in other cities, because now our world is global. We can't be, we can't go away from agenda that we discuss globally. So but I want to understand when we speak about city. All of speakers told that city have to implement smart elements, city is big market, etc., etc. But when we speak about city, who is the city? Is it citizens? Is it inhabitants? Is it authority? Is it mayor of the city who make decision about some investment? Is it city council deputies? Who is it? Is it local business maybe? And when we try to understand these layers, we understand that we have different meaning and different understanding of smart city. The problem is how to combine a vision of big infrastructure, and Mr. Dixon quite right when he said that people need water supply, people need safety, need good public transport, etc. But in modern era of smartphone, tablets, applications, as Nicolas said, people go far away from ordinary needs, and I suppose they think it's normal when you have clear water in your apartment, and when you have good public transport with timetable that good manage. It's like metrics that we have. And I have my tablet, I have my social media, and I live there, not in real city. I think it's one of the problem, and this level of governance of city and level of inhabitants segregated now. So the question is, who is our consumer? Who is consumer of smart city? And I want to discuss it because I think the main consumer is inhabitants and home, families. Families is the main consumer of smart cities. The second question that I want to clear up is data. Data and information. Surely we have a lot of information now, and each of us produce some information in social media, and with our smartphone, if somebody do not switch off tracker of your smartphone, you constantly give information to Apple or Google about your location, about your all of you. They know all of you. And in this case, the question is, can we trust for this information? Is it true or not? For example, 2 days ago, I tried to find the best way from Paris Charles de Gaulle airport to the center of the city. And Google Maps told me, you have to use ID bus only. We do not have any information about others' transportation system. You have to go to the center by this bus. But I understand that it's not true. We have different variants. And in this case, what is the smart city? When big information system narrows the people, manage their behavior, or when people can make independent solution. And this is the second problem that I see in global context. Thanks.
We will get back to these comments, Alexey. I think with the example of Director SASAKI and the agglomeration of Tokyo, we can try to figure out how those issues, big data, big information systems, the management of massive flows, right, especially of traffic, referring to Alexey's example, how does this take place in large agglomeration systems? And as far as it has been mentioned by all of you in a different manner, but the issue of people's behavior, and also the level of trust for public services or for services, the needs and the trust all together. How do you view that from the example of Tokyo, where your organization, but you can tell us a little bit about also Mori Memorial Foundation, has recently developed on the ground of the Global Power City Index, which you have developed already a couple of years ago, a new chapter, right, of this ranking, trying to measure the level of social capital in cities and the role of intangible assets, if I may say so, in cities, but connecting that with technology, connecting that with markets. So give us a view, an overview of your feelings and the experience which are now taking place in Tokyo. And I think we have got a few slides.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. Thank you for all amazing speakers, and thanks for the introduction. You really actually pointed out all the points, so you can actually continue if you like to. You know better about the subjects. By way of introduction, my name is Koji Sasaki. I'm from the Mori Memorial Foundation, which is based in Tokyo. It's founded by one of the major urban developers in Tokyo, and our foundation was founded so that we could study the sort of latest trends in global cities to give some policy proposal to the people who are running Tokyo and as well as other cities. And and our foundation is, I guess, best known for its Global Power City Index. It's one of the urban global city indices in the world that uses 70 indicators to kind of measure the global power of major cities in the world. And we also do a lot of case studies on the, it's kind of a benchmarking of various global cities such as London, New York, and Paris, and many other cities in the world. And I'd like to start with the, because it's an issue about disruptive economy, I'd like to start with this. I just came up on this stage, and I got an email while I was in Paris on the way to Nice last week from a guy who was working for Starbucks in Tokyo. We got to know each other because I frequented the cafe, and he, 2 years ago, I guess, he was worried about if he would work for this power company in Nagoya, which is probably 300 kilometers away from Tokyo, where his parents live, because he got an offer from that big company. But at the same time, he was so into this. He was developing some smartphone applications, and he wanted to start up, and he knew he could. He thinks that he could succeed in that his endeavor too, and he was kind of in the middle of this decision making, and then he was so serious that he always talked to me about, I'm not so sure which one I should choose. And but he actually chose to work near his parents' house in Nagoya, which is very far from Tokyo. And he started to work for this power company, which is quite established. The parents think that if you work for this company, you will be okay for the rest of your life. And then the parents also expected him to take care of themselves, when they get older. But last week in Paris, I got an email from this guy. Hey, I got out of this power company. I decided to really, work in a startup company that he was involved in, and it's a very symbolic sort of example of this, this really strong trend in Japan for a sort of new kinds of industry, and it's the new awareness among the young people about what they can do with their lives and their society. And talking about Japan, Tokyo metropolitan area has about 37 million population. It's almost a size. It's actually it's actually larger than the size of Canada, and economically, well, the GDP of Kanto region, which is the Tokyo Metropolitan region, is about the size of the economy of Brazil. So you can see how big that is and how intensive the economic activity of that region. But also it is a rapidly aging society. By 2030, more than 30% of the population will be over 65 years old. It's quite aged. The society is rapidly aging. So there's in terms of smart cities, there's a strong emphasis, I think, in healthcare and medical industry and also care industry in terms of smart cities. So now they're developing, the Japanese companies are developing sort of systems where you can sort of monitor the health of their parents who live outside the town. So that kind of industry is, it's very, I think, particular to the smart technologies in Japan. And Japan is also notoriously subject to various kinds of natural disasters. And like Mr. Dixon, sorry, like Michael mentioned, we had an earthquake in 2011, which was a very large earthquake, which affected many of the people who are in the east of the country. And now smart technology is developing in the area of sort of emergency alerts in terms of natural disaster. So I think almost every cell phone today in Tokyo or in Japan has this emergency earthquake alert system. So what happens is that when an earthquake happens, Japan has its around island. There are so many sensors of earthquakes, and the sensors get the quakes earlier than the people who are living in the island. So it will give you a instant alert that warn you for the incoming earthquake. But the earthquake comes in 2 seconds or 3 seconds. But it's good for yourself to prepare for that quake. So you can turn off your fire, or you can prepare for the shake. So it's also a very particular market. Well, Japan itself is already a very kind of it's developed a very kind of a highly advanced sort of urban management system. Maybe you might have heard that the trains in Tokyo, they don't run by you know, gaps of trains. It just, you have a minute by minute timetable, and the train comes at the exact time that is indicated in the table. And if it delays for a few minutes, the operators apologize to you in a train. Sorry for being 2 minutes late, 3 minutes late. So that kind of thing. But so smart technology is really a way of really increasing the quality that is already kind of high. And as you might have heard, we are expecting a Tokyo Olympics in 2020, and where we have hundreds of urban developments in Tokyo. And the Tokyo Metropolitan government, the Japanese government is now, they set up a task force for urban innovation, and some of the there are a few examples of smart, innovative technologies that will be. It's going to be the Olympics will be a showcase for these technologies, such as a sort of sensor-guided buses or traffic lights. So when the rapid transit bus goes on the street, the traffic light adjusts itself to be always blue, or to be advantage, to be favorable, sorry, to the buses or public transports. In Japan, the Japanese companies are developing sort of robotics sort of robot suits for people with disabilities to be able to actively participate in the game and the preparation of the games, in etc. There are so many different kinds of technology that are sort of particular, also peculiar in a way. But so all these things are happening in Tokyo, and at the same time, in 2027, we are expecting a release or the opening of the maglev train that will connect Tokyo to, as I mentioned, Nagoya in 40 minutes. So Nagoya Tokyo will become a kind of like a metropolitan area, which will produce a huge amount of intensity to the business activities. However, what makes a city great is not always tangible. It's not just technologies, but I think it is something that is intangible, that you cannot see. And as Mr. Bain mentioned, it's really about people, not just about the technologies. I mean, you can see many examples of high-tech cities which turned into a dystopia because of I think, this kind of awareness, and I really think that I really hope that the Olympics will be a kind of a starter for this new change among the awareness of the people who live there.
So what you say is that high-tech city is not smart city. Smart city and high-tech city is something a little bit different, right?
Right, I think so. The high-tech city only cannot produce a livable smart city that we want to build. So it's always about, yes, technology as well as people. So people need to actually educate themselves, or people need to be educated to be good citizens in the smart city, maybe to be good smart citizens.
Another thing is that with the Mori Foundation in Tokyo, you have launched last year or 2 years ago an innovative city forum.
Yes.
All right. And as I understand, you started with technologies. And now the more you go in this innovative city approach, the more it goes also with elements of sociology mixed with technology.
Right.
Is it right?
Yes. Sociology and humanity probably, and science, yes.
And I think it's all the more interesting as you have described very high-tech society, right? Very high-tech elements, from maglev to exoskeletons, etc., plus advanced health systems. Do you think the next generation or the next steps of smart cities will be to incorporate much more elements of sociology and humanity than in the past years, let's say?
That's a good question. What we're trying to do in our innovative city forum, we have a conference in Tokyo which happens it's a conference in Tokyo where we have international speakers to discuss the future of cities. But our approach is not only technological, but we also invite people who are working in the creative fields, and we also invite people we invite artists who are working, who are creating works, sometimes on the street level, and we also invite city experts to discuss the future of cities. And definitely the people are trying to see a city as a place where you find new ideas and to connect with other people. And if you can say, if that's sociological or humanistic, definitely the awareness of the people living in Tokyo is going towards that direction too.
Philip, is that a background or an horizon for the Smart Cities Council, those very last sets of elements which Dr. SASAKI has just mentioned? And maybe afterwards Michael Dixon and Peter van den Heede, a fresh comment from the industry about those disruptions coming in and those different dimensions of smart cities that are much more complex than just technology-folded issues.
No, I think that Dr. Suzuki's extrapolation of there's a difference between high-tech, smart, and use of the word humanistic is very important. Our sort of branding slogan at Smart Cities Council is that the technologies that we educate cities about are to make those cities more livable, workable, and sustainable. So these are a sort of a mantra around triple bottom line, which is the idea that you just can't have financial returns. You need social returns and you need environmental returns. And so essentially, as Michael said, there has to be a financial benefit to the city, but what he probably didn't even say enough was the idea that regardless of the financial benefit, the citizens of the city need to see an increase in services, benefits from services that make it a better city. And part of the problem, what? Okay.
With the mic.
Well, you said it. Okay. Go ahead. No. Okay. Michael corrected me, so. He did say it had to be better services and more services. And I think that's the bottom line here. So it's not just a question of the financial return. It is a question of what are the benefits to the cities. But this goes back to, and this is our reflection at Smart Cities Council, is that the benefits that this, I spent over a month in India in February, and if you talk to people in India about what they want out of their smart cities, it's not really the same as you would hear in Tokyo. They want to be able to walk around the block. They want to be able to walk out and not have to deal with the trash, and this is why Prime Minister Modi is so focused on this Swat Bharat campaign, which is about cleaning the streets, which really goes to the point I was making about changing behavior. So that is part of the mix here that has to be respected, that on one hand, the technology is important, but then on the other hand, every city has its own unique problems. And Dr. Suzuki was talking about the aging problem in Japan, which is significantly different now from other countries, especially in Latin America, where you actually have younger populations. So anyway, so the whole idea is to take these technologies, to understand the benefits, and to have selective application to meet the social, cultural, geopolitical needs of the city.
Michael, would you say that smart cities should be better oriented so as to really contribute to build trust within the society, between the industry, the people, the governments, the different layers of what a city is, as Alexey has mentioned? Or would you say that it is still much more an issue of technology that needs to be developed and the benefits will come out of that?
At the risk of being a little contentious, I think we make this too hard. And I want to give 3 examples. I mean, we can talk a lot about we're going to do a sociological analysis of what's coming, or we're going to do an ethnographic study of what... It's pretty simple stuff. And I want to use 3 examples. The city of Miami, although it's based on the sea, imports a lot of fresh water. And several years ago, we were asked by the city to check how much water was coming through the pipe. How much water is being imported? Simple question. And we found a mismatch between how much the city was paying for and how much was being delivered. Pretty simple stuff, something we're all, as people, familiar with. You want to get what you pay for. And so the city said, okay, well, we're going to fix it. Where does it go? So they've mapped and found where all the water goes in the cities. The city has 168 outlets, swimming pools, municipal offices, baseball diamonds, tennis courts, and they map their assets on the... So they've now got 19 concurrent projects running in the city that interrelate these systems. All came from a mayor, Carlos Jimenez, a man shares many characteristics with Mayor Estrossi, who says, can someone tell me how much water I import? You take another example, which is people now in cities who say, if I can use public transport and a pooled electric vehicle and a shared multi-purpose transport vehicle, which I used to call a bus, but multi-transfer, and not buy a capital asset called a car, my life is different. The big car companies have given up on the idea that in the long term, people will own a capital asset called a car. Perhaps my grandchildren, I don't have any, one day might say, tell me about when you swung on the big wheel and pushed the things on the floor. I mean, we're seeing this change before our eyes. If you think about a social construct, I mentioned Uber earlier, think about Airbnb. Nobody decided they would or wouldn't have Airbnb, just like no one 20 years ago decided they would or wouldn't have the internet. It's not owned by any. Society says, this is valuable to me. People say, I don't care what the existing structures are, I can use technology to generate something that's valuable for me and gives me value for money. So I think we risk making it too hard. We've got to look at the simple things. We look at Nice, a spectacular city, globally recognised for tourism. Maybe that's something that's interesting here. You look at cities in Africa where 50% of the people admitted to hospital are there because the water is dirty. People aren't confused about what's important to them. So I think we should give people, the social networks give us this fantastic opportunity for the society to tell us what's important. Technology is there. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to accurately predict the weather for the next 96 hours, which is what some of our systems do now. But people want to know. I want to know what the weather's like in 2 days' time, and I'll pay to find out because I can plan something. So I think the big, like always, the big issues, the big questions, the big things that are interesting, that's where to look. And then you can bring together research and social contracts and big industrial companies and cities that have a view around how these things come together. I'll just finish, Nicolas, if I can quickly, on the issue of trust and security, which I think you asked me. Data is a big issue. We talked about some of these things. I see it very clearly, and IBM sees it very clearly, in two kind of different categories. The first is related to security, which we think is a huge issue, and it's getting bigger. And it's costing a huge amount of money, and it's going to continue to cost a huge amount of money. There is no limit to the malevolence of humans. Since Adam and Eve, people were bad. A very small number of people are very, very bad and do very bad things to the rest of us. That is not going to stop. The problem we have now is that technology gives you the ability to be bad and have a huge impact. And so we have to spend a huge amount of money to stop those bad people. That will not go away. Security is worse than ever. It's getting worse. It's going to cost more. Every public and private sector organisation in the world has a new focus on security and spending a lot of money to do something about it. That is different from the privacy of your data. Put up your hands if you've bought an app in the last week. Come on, don't.
Who has bought an app?
How long?
Or downloaded an app?
Downloaded an app. Bought an app from Play, from whatever it's called, Google Play or iTunes, whatever it's called. Who's bought an app? Come on, I can't see because of the bright lights. Okay, a few people are on it. Yeah, okay. When it said, here's the 6 screens of horrible stuff, accept or you get nothing, who just hit accept? Thank you so much. At that point, you surrendered your privacy for a benefit. And that's what so many of, particularly our younger people, are prepared to do. If somebody wants to know my location as reported by my phone, and that means a car will pick me up in 3 minutes and take me somewhere else, I'm happy to tell somebody. But I can not tell them. So I think there's an opt-in issue around privacy for service that is incredibly different from the vicious, nasty, horrible, huge issues associated with security.
Thanks. Peter, a comment also from maybe the smart grid point of view.
Yeah, what I have heard here has alerted me that we took the right decision not to build up a smart city team. So, as every city has a unique profile, unique needs, that is exactly what we thought at ABB, that it makes no sense to make up a whole construction around it. It's about the local people that have to learn and to understand the needs of their own villages. What I also have heard is, especially from Tokyo, yeah, you can use technology really to high tech, but we believe that you we would like it probably from sales point of view, but we don't think that you have to go that far to become a smart city. Even if I look to me in person, I had the advantage being on holiday with a broken GSM. It was my best holiday ever. No mails, no phone calls, whatever. So sometimes we are so connected and so belonging to the apps and all possibilities we have around us that we forgot that you still can live without it as well. So even by renting a car, I took one without the GPS. I had one on my smartphone, not anymore. So I had to buy a map. Still amazing that they still are available, those maps, but it works pretty well. So technology, and we are a technology provider, has to be at the service of people, especially in citizens, for citizens, as there are huge needs there for the being greener, emission-free, whatever. But don't go too far as well, because you will lose probably the interaction with the local people as well. So you keep the balance in between social acceptance, legal things around what you want to do, technology, political behavior. And I'm quite well placed for that, as living in Belgium with 6 governments. Only if you go to Brussels, you need to convince 3 governments to cooperate. So the traffic jam in Brussels is the worst from the whole world, as I have heard. But you need to discuss this with 3 governments. I can tell you this is almost impossible. So in the next 10 years, nothing will happen there, even if it is really necessary. So step by step, using the technology to improve the life of people there is already an ideal situation to become a smart city.
Thank you. I understand this issue of allowing the variety of cases to enter into the vocabulary and the global understanding of smart cities is extremely important. Michael has touched for me a very important aspect of our discussion, that is what part of my privacy, as you mentioned, I am ready so as to surrender to get a greater benefit, right? As you pointed out with the GIS system and getting an Uber cab or whatsoever. But in general, what kind of services I'm ready, I want, or I need to have, and what I'm ready to pay for, what I can afford to pay for, and what kind of other benefits I'm ready to deal with. So this aspect also, I guess, can be explored in many different ways, and depending on the region of the world, depending on the legal system, and etc. So smart city is really a complex spider web, right? There is not a single folded issues, but clearly the issue of contracts, market-driven contracts is a major issue. Before we go further, do we have any questions or observations or remarks from the floor? At this stage of our discussion, we have explored a quite in-depth issue of future aspects and existing aspects of smart cities. Is anybody of you strongly disagree with what has been said, or are we missing a major point you would like to raise? Not at all? All right. I just wanted to make sure we are not missing any. A question for Michael and for Peter especially, but then Alexey can also give a comment. We have been talking about a vast amount of differences between smart city issues. We have been also highlighting the fact that tech city or high tech is not equal to smart city, right? Smart city is something much more subtle with the interaction with the people, with the governance systems, etc. What would be the benefit, especially for you as companies, of taking part to a new network or to a global smart cities council? Peter or Michael?
Yeah, our advantage, it's already mentioned it in the beginning as well. We are seen as technology provider, means we have products that we can sell to the market, to cities, to improve the technology available to come to a better life. As soon as we try to contact a local government, yeah, we are also seen as product sellers, so not as people that are able to listen and that can tackle the hurdles they have and bring it to solutions. So for us, there is a clear need even to cooperate with a lot of other companies to bring this to the attention of governments. If I look, for example, to my local situation now, I'm leader of that Smart City initiative since December last year. So now I had the chance to discuss with all cabinets of all 6 governments about those topics as I became a kind of an independency in my role. And this was not possible to join this kind of discussions the moment I was just working as an ABB member. So working together as a group gives you much more credit. You are seen then more as a neutral expert or able to bring him to new insights, tackle the hurdles. And this is only possible if you join forces with a lot of other people. For example, in Belgium, I'm now the chairman, but both colleagues helping me are coming from Siemens and IBM. So you can say, okay, once again, the largest companies, yes, but that's pretty normal as we have quite some substantial solutions available. The other companies working together are smaller ones and tackling most of the time one particular part of it. So it's not that bad that larger companies are bringing their attention or their focus together to one global part.
Michael.
Well, Nicolas, I don't think people are confused about IBM. IBM's a 104-year-old company, and we have 400,000 employees at the moment, and we're present in 172 countries around the world, and hundreds of cities. And we're involved in the Smarter Cities Challenge, which Nice won in 2012. We have a range of other programs. We're involved across all industries. But we're not confused. We're a company in business to return profit to our shareholders after delivering results for our clients. We don't develop products. We don't have people in IBM that sit there and say, let's make another product, it'll be a great product, everybody will buy it. We work with our clients and we respond to the market. And I would very strongly assure you that we've been in business for so long because we try and listen to our clients and we try and develop what we think they want to buy. So we sell high-value services, high-value software, high-value hardware, we integrate it and we deliver results for our clients around the world. Organisations like the Smarter Cities Council, Philip and Jesse, EDEX, the university here in Nice, universities around the world, other non-profit government organisations, public sector organisations, regional governments, local governments, national governments are all fantastic sources of information to us that help us build the capability to respond. Technology on its own doesn't do anything. It's the application of technology that makes a difference. And we are so focused and so attached to smarter cities because we think that there is so much transformation ahead for the public sector in general and cities in particular as they transform, much the way we've seen in the last decade or two from banks, telephone companies, airlines, insurance companies and others who've completely changed the way they do business. To give you an example, you know, I've got a job where I travel a lot, work hard, long hours. Guess who sits up at night in the hotel somewhere doing his banking? Me. Why? Online banking, fantastic. How does that work? Well, the banks outsourced all their work to their customers. What a fantastic business model. Now, I happen to like it because I can manage things and it's very good. Governments have all that ahead of them. We're going to see that kind of transformation in years to come. And we're not quite sure how we do it, but I think the fact that social networks and the way in which people can now apply technology to get value, tons of apps being developed by all sorts of interesting people, the good ones get picked up fast and scaled and delivered around the world, the rise of cloud computing where people couldn't care less what's behind the wall, as long as the function I'm getting here is something that changed my life. All these models are bringing around the biggest generational change in technology in 20 or 30 years, since the rise of the internet in the early 1990s. So I think it's a very exciting time. A long-winded answer perhaps to your question, Nicholas, but my view is not only do you need organisations like the Smarter City Councils, universities, public, private sector think tanks, the Brookings, all of these organisations, you need these kind of fora that we have here in Nice Côte d'Azur in the next 2 days, where people come and spend their time, effort and money to listen to these kind of ideas, not from the panel, from these kind of specialists around the world to share their view of what's happening, because all of you will take those messages and use them as you think about what Smarter Cities means in your professional roles.
Thank you, Michael. We are reaching nearly the end of our discussion, and I hope you will bring some insights back home, or back in your families, or back in your companies. Just one last round of comments from each of you, starting with Alexey, about the different kinds of issues we have been dealing with during our hour and a half conversation, and about trust, clustering, link with governments, business profitability, business predictability, business durability, the difference between smart city and tech city, evolutions that we have seen coming in the field of smart city, the interest to play in networks, because it's a completely different relationship that involves business, but also other levels of confidence, either with governments or with the people. All about that. One short comment: what would you like people from the audience you would like to highlight or insist on before wrapping up our session? Alexey.
I want to answer for the question of our session about end of smart city, because I did not do it before. So I think we are going to another meaning of smart city. We are going from meaning of smart infrastructure to smart citizen in high-tech city. Citizen with positive emotion, with sense that satisfied by all of the city environment, including infrastructure, smart infrastructure system. And for me, Michael talked about quality of service and finance benefits. I want to add one more, positive sense and emotion of citizens, like thought thorough in this value.
Thank you, Alexey. Peter.
Yeah, so from our side, what we believe is that at least we have to involve politicians much more, the local ones. And what European politicians believe as well is that cities will have the power in the future. So I spoke to many of them, and they say, yeah, local governments will have less and less power in the future, and we see that cities will take up the lead in what happens in their environment, as already often mentioned, and also now by Alexey, that local people with local needs will have the impact on their city, and their city has to improve the situation or solve the needs of these people. So what we see is that if I look, for example, to Belgium, we have so much governments that they all will disappear. So cities will become much more powerful in the future, and means for us as technology provider that we have to deal much more as in the past with corporations in between, even competitors, smaller companies, invest in research and development together with universities to make sure that our technologies are able to be connected to one global system for the city, as this is too many an independent one today.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, I'd like to finish with a very short comment that's not technical at all. I think the fundamental ingredient in success in smarter cities is leadership. And we've talked a little about things happening around the world, the difference in cities, all sorts of issues that we might consider. For me, very clearly, it comes down to leadership. I can look to the projects that I think have done well around the world, the places where we've been very much involved in delivering the kind of results I've been speaking to about, and I can take you to the person that had the vision, the person who was responsible for getting results, and the person who felt accountable to his or her people for what he or she did. So I would encourage you all, it's not necessarily the mayor, it's not necessarily the department secretary, it's not necessarily the assistant director, it's not necessarily the CIO, it could be anybody that really passionately believes in the concepts and issues we've been talking about and decides to do something about it. And I hope there's more than a few of you in the audience this afternoon. Thank you.
Mr. Sasaki.
Yes, I was trying to mention earlier this Buddhist concept of Esho Funi. A means your environment. Sho is basically the entity, and the Funi means this unity, inseparableness. So Esho Funi means your environment. Your environment is you, and I think what it means for this city talk is that, or what it philosophically means for anybody who is working for the city is that you cannot just work on the built environment, or you cannot just work on the citizens. It's always one, and then it is what people have in their mind that really changes the society and that creates the new century.
And Philip.
Thank you. This time I think I did hear Michael, and I think I can build on what he said in that every person in this room lives in a city. And every person in this room has the ability to change what that city looks like. So it's more than just, as Michael was saying, the mayor or the city councilman, it's also you. And so what I want to do is leave you with something that will make you more powerful. And that is, please, and this is not a marketing ploy, but go to our website, smartcitiescouncil.com, and download a copy of the Readiness Guide. It analyzes over 5,000 smart city case studies, and it provides, in very layman-like language, ways to go about transforming your city. And there's a lot of other information out there, but this is something that I was particularly involved in. Every day, today, I spent about 2 hours putting together a presentation for the IT director of the city of Doral, which is right outside of Miami, because she was making a presentation to her city council and mayor about what smart cities would look like. And so we took the information we had in the Readiness Guide and we put it together in a PowerPoint for her so that she could go talk to her decision makers in a coherent layperson way. And that is what we are here for. We are here to make you and give you the ability to go and change the way you live. And I think all of us hope that that's what you do.
Thank you. So, emotions and trust, multi-stakeholder coalitions, leadership, ability to meet challenges, sense of duty and responsibilities, environmental balance and state of mind, information and communication would be a couple of elements that we can derive from our discussions, and I think would characterize not so bad what smart cities are about today. So definitely not the end of smart city, but definitely also a more complex and maybe more interesting image and illustration of what smart cities are made of. And thank you so much, Michael, to have responded to the challenge of explaining and showcasing what the industry is about. And thank you to Philip, Alexey, and Peter, and Koji Sasaki to have brought the pieces and the bricks to the debate. And thank you for us all to have taken part to our discussion. Thank you so much.